recorded onto this. Very good. So great. So this is the Literacy Network of South Berkshire's Citizenship Training Workshop. And today we'll talk about the process, but we'll also have conversation. And I think that's the best thing. Some of you have already been citizenship tutors. Some of you are interested in taking that on. And maybe some of you are just here to learn more about it. And it helps just to know about it and to know about the life of an immigrant. And the ones who make it to the citizenship path are quite lucky, right? They've got the paperwork they need. They've got ideally the support they need through LitNet, and hopefully their interview doesn't take too long and they're a big success. So yeah, so the importance of it is life-changing. Becoming a citizen. And so what we offer, and Pam will talk more about that in today's call, but we have a wonderful scholarship, a very generous scholarship that nearly pays for the entire process to Homeland Security and to the Berkshire Immigrant Center. And we provide a tutor who works with the N400, which are all the questions that somebody needs to know to be able to pass, to answer quickly in a highly stressful situation with stakes that are highly stressful to become a citizen. I mean, it in some ways can't get bigger in terms of being nerve-wracking and being important. Yeah, so we're gonna start today with Lorena. So Lorena is a LitNet board member, and she's the director of client services. Now, I still didn't get the whole thing. Lorena, go ahead and introduce yourself, and I'll let you take the screen too.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lorena Dust, and I'm the Director of Client and Community Services at the Berkshire Immigrant Center. We're a small nonprofit in Pittsfield, and we help a variety of people from many countries change their status in the United States, apply for citizenship, and many other things. And I'm also a board member, and I joined in early April, I think, of this year. So it's been a short amount of time, but it's been amazing. So I'm going to briefly talk to you about the process of applying for citizenship and who is eligible. That is an assessment that an immigration attorney or an accredited representative like I am would do. That's not something that you would do, but I think it is very important for you to know what it takes to become eligible to apply for citizenship and what the process looks like. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Can you all see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is who is eligible to become a citizen. The first requirement is that the person needs to be 18 years or older, be a permanent resident for 3 or 4 years. And if you see on the right side of the screen, there is a green card. That is what it means to be a permanent resident. You have a card that authorizes you to live and work legally in the United States. And you're going to see that the bottom side says resident since. That's where you're going to find the date that the person became a lawful permanent resident. So the person will apply after 3 years if they are married to a United States citizen and they're still living with that United States citizen and married to that United States citizen. If that's not the case, then the person cannot apply in 3 years. Otherwise, the person would apply in 5 years of having their green card, no matter how they got their green card. It could have been through a parent's petition, siblings petition, people who come as asylees, refugees. After having 5 years with the green card, they can apply for citizenship. Another important thing is that the person applying from, let's say, Massachusetts needs to prove that they have been living in Massachusetts for at least 3 months before they apply. And the reason for this is that they realized that there were many states that were taking less time to approve, to have interviews and approve the applications. So people were moving to those states just to apply, even though they were not residing there. So now they have to prove that they've been living there for 3 months at least. There's also a physical presence requirement for a period of time. And basically what that means is that if you're applying based on 5 years, for example, half of that time you need to prove that you have spent it in the United States. that you haven't traveled over 6 months at a time, because they would consider that you abandon your residence. So we usually, with people that travels a lot outside the United States, we usually have to count the days that they've been out and they've been in here and make sure that they fill that requirement. They also need to demonstrate good moral character, which is a little tricky to define because it's very broad, but it's basically a person that has done their taxes every year, that has been good in the community. Hopefully the person hasn't been arrested. Hopefully the person is not a member of a gang or of a terrorist group, which are questions on the N400 that you learn about. And lastly, and it's very important, they will need to demonstrate that they have a basic knowledge of United States history and government. And those are 100 questions that they have to learn. Out of those 100 questions, they'll be asked 10 at their interview, and they need to answer 6 of them correctly to pass that part of the interview. And they also need to demonstrate that they can read, write, and speak and understand basic English. So I'm sure that later on we'll talk about what this preparation looks like from tutors. How do people apply? Let's say that we have determined that they are eligible to apply for citizenship. Then the first thing will be to fill out the form N400, which you can see here on the right side. It is 20 pages long, and it has a bunch of personal information that goes back 5 years. So they need to list 5 years of addresses, 5 years of employment, 5 years of travel outside the United States. They need to list all their kids or stepkids. And they also have to answer to a bunch of security questions that will show that they have good moral character. Generally, they would only have to submit a copy of their green card to prove that they're eligible. Some people will have to submit a copy of their marriage certificate if they're applying based on marriage, or their divorce certificate. And then they also have to submit the filing fee, which is $725 at the moment. That's only to cover the cost for the USCIS. For processing times, how long does it take? So the first thing will be to mail the application. It is mailed to Dallas if you're applying from Massachusetts. Once it is received in Dallas, the first thing that they do is that they check for completion and they check that the money is there. So once that happens, they are going to send a receipt notice. That receipt notice you can see on the right side. It will have a priority date, and it will say that the fee was received. So once they have processed that application in Dallas, they send it to the National Benefit Center in Missouri. That's where they're going to process that application, but it goes to Dallas first. I put here in a little red box a priority date. That is the date that the application was received. And I'm going to tell you in a minute why that's important. After they receive the notice, the person can get a biometrics notice, usually within 2 or 3 months after getting the receipt notice. That right now may be waived. And the reason is because they don't want that many people going to the service center to get their fingerprints and photo taken again. So if the person has had their biometrics done in the last 10 years, they're going to waive that. So the person in this area, you have to go to Albany to get your biometrics. So if they waive it, then you save a trip, but they still keep the money. Those $725 include an $85 fee for the biometrics. They're gonna keep it even if you don't have to go there. So what happens during that time is that they have to run a background check and make sure that the person has not committed any crimes or anything like that. They just want to make sure that they have all the information on the applicant before the applicant goes to their interview. That usually takes 3 months. The fingerprints take 3 months to clear. It is taking a lot more now, but in an ideal way, 3 months after the fingerprints clear, they will have an interview. They get a notice saying when their interview is, at what time. It's usually a month or a month and a half after they receive that letter. And for this area, applicants that live in Berkshire County, they have to go to Lawrence, really close to Boston. The day of the interview, they're gonna have to, sit down in front of an officer and discuss their application and take the test that we'll talk about later. and hoping that everything goes well that day. Then they either, right now because of COVID, they're being sworn in right there on the same day, meaning that an hour later they get their citizenship certificate that says that they are citizens. Or if they're not having a ceremony that day, they could be scheduled for a later day. And it could change wherever they have to go. Maybe they have to go back to Lawrence. Maybe we have a local ceremony and they can be sworn in there, or they have to go to Laurel or Northampton or whatever they have one available. And that day they will be becoming a US citizen. The reason why I highlighted the priority date, it's because I want to show you the current times, which there's a long way. It's understandable because of COVID. But this is the processing times as of last night. So this is found on the USCIS website. When you put the type of form and the field office that it's serving this applicant, which is Lawrence, you're gonna see in the bottom that it's taking from 9.5 months to 12.5 months. And that priority date is important because this client here applied on September 17, 2021. It was very recent. And on the right side here, where it says receipt date, it says September 22, 2020. What that means is that they are right now revising applications received on September 22, 2020 or before that. What it means is that this applicant technically is going to have to wait a year before the application is revised and before they can get an interview. These are longer dates because what this means is that if your receipt notice has that date, then you can inquire and you can ask the USCIS, what's going on? Why is my application taking so long? But if your date is not that one or before that one, they're not going to pay attention to you. So they make it longer just to not have people bugging them every day. So it could happen that it takes less time, but that is what it's taking right now. I do have to say that some people are very lucky and get interviewed in 3 months. But we've had clients that and students, LitNet students that applied last year in October, November, and they're still waiting. So it is difficult to predict. And then what I wanted to talk to you was about the issues that we see when people are applying. One of the things that could stop someone from applying is not registering for selected service. Any male between the ages of 18 and 26 has to register. So if they're between that age still, when they want to apply, they have to register first, wait until their registration is completed, and then they can apply. But what is tricky is when you're after the age of 26. Generally, you would have to wait 5 years from the time that you did not register and you lost the chance to before you can apply. So most males that are under the age of 31 and didn't register, they have to wait until they're 31 or older to apply for citizenship. Registering to vote is a big deal too. People that are not United States citizens should not register to vote, but some people don't know, or they go with their parents-in-law that are US citizens and are so excited to bring them. So we've seen a few cases where they have registered by mistake. It is a little tricky too. It depends on the situation. It depends on the other things that the applicant has done to see if they could apply or not, but definitely voting in an election, even if it is like a town hall election for your town selectment, can stop you from ever becoming a US citizen. It is very serious because it's a false claim to citizenship. Also, not disclosing information in previous forms. People that are becoming US citizens, they would have submitted previous forms to become a permanent resident. And sometimes they don't disclose information there, like arrests, or maybe they don't disclose all their kids because they didn't think that they had to list the kids that are over the age of 21. And that could also become an issue for their citizenship because it is considered fraud that they did not disclose all the information. Of course, we have criminal issues that it really depends on what could it be, but some of them could stop you from ever becoming a US citizen, or some of them would make you wait longer, like if you got a DUI. Speeding tickets are not that bad, depending on how much you paid. If it's over $500, the officer is gonna think that you don't have good moral character because you were speeding too much. Spending too much time out of the country is also another issue that we encounter. As I said before, people shouldn't spend more than 6 months out of the country at a time, but also there's some people that maybe spend 5 months, come back in for a month and leave again for 5 months. That is also an issue for their citizenship, and that's why we have to count the days and make sure that they have at least half of those 5 years they had spent it fully in the United States. Not filing taxes is also a reason for them to deny your citizenship application, or maybe you have to, get all caught up with filing your taxes, paying your penalties and all of that before you apply, because not filing taxes doesn't show good moral character. And the last thing that I put there, conversation, that I think it applies to all of you, and you will be greatly very helpful with that, is a conversation. A lot of people think that they only have to study the questions on the form and they'll be fine. But the truth is that because you have to show that you have a basic understanding of English, the best recommendation is that you practice talking to the officer from the beginning. The officer is going to say, "Good morning, how are you today? How was the drive-in? Was it snowing too much?" And having that conversation with the officer from the beginning, when the officer comes and gets you, it's really going to be helpful for your application, because it is very likely that if the officer sees that you are able to communicate and have a conversation, then the questions at the end are going to be less. At least the questions on the form that are the security questions. They might not ask for you to define some words and all of that, because they've already seen that you can communicate. And that goes together with studying beyond the exam. We recently had a student, which was also a client, that went to her interview, and she was asked about an application that she filled out 10 years ago for her tourist visa. And she was able to respond to it. And, she passed. But I think about, what if she had not been prepared to talk about other things? If she had only been thinking about, I only need to respond to where I live and say yes or no, and that's it, then she wouldn't have been able to respond to those visa questions, and she wouldn't have passed that day. They wouldn't have told her anything. So it is very important to prepare beyond the application, and also very important to not overtalk. I always tell clients, when the officer asks you a question that is yes or no, you answer yes or no. You don't have to say yes because blah, 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 or no because blah, blah, blah. No, you just answer yes or no. So it's like you have to balance that, how much you're gonna talk, but make sure you talk enough to prove that you can communicate in English and understand what the officer is saying. And I think that's it. I didn't want to say much more, but I'm open to any questions now, or I don't know, Lee, if you prefer for the questions to be at the end.
Yeah, let's maybe take a few now, but not get stuck there. So if anybody has kind of a pressing question for Lorena now, just about her presentation, but then we can talk about process at the end. So,
and I'm going to go over some of the things she discussed on how to be a tutor.
Okay, so Julie has a question now, so let's just see. Let's take some questions just quickly here. So
yeah, I wanted to know if all of the learners who come to LitNet for citizenship tutoring are also clients of the BIC.
Yeah.
I think so. One of the requirements for LitNet is that you, before you apply, you have to prove that you have met with an immigration attorney or with us. So LitNet knows that they are eligible to apply. So I think that we share most of the client students. I know that there have been other students that first go to LitNet and then they're sent to us for that assessment. So I think most of them are.
Okay, so and the reason I asked that question is just to make sure that all of this wonderful information you've just given us allows us as tutors to put it in context, but that many of the things that you made note of that an applicant would have to be aware of would not be the responsibility necessarily of the tutor, but that we can rest assured that those issues are being dealt with by the BIC or whatever attorney the learner is working with.
Yes, definitely. We usually, we wouldn't send anybody to LitNet to apply for the scholarship or to get the classes if we are not, if we don't know that they're eligible. So we send eligible people because we have done the full assessment and we know that even if they had a traffic incident or anything like that, they are okay and they can apply. So we do that assessment first, for sure.
I'm going to take Diane's question, then I'm going to suggest that we move on and just see Val has things to share, Pamela has things to share. Let's just see if we kind of answer the questions. But Diane, I'll take a question from you. Before
Okay, I had two questions on the N400. One on addresses within the past 5 years and the other on the dates of trips, which I assume is also 5 years. Does the applicant have to remember in order the addresses, the dates, the trips home, the trips back? Is that important to memorize?
It is important because a lot of officers do ask it. The applicant can say, look, I was living at this address. I don't remember the date exactly. I think it was 2012, and that is completely fine. But some officers do get picky about that. So I do recommend it that they memorize at least the exact address and at least the year and the month where they were living there. And same with the trips. Usually they would ask, how many trips did you take? What was the last one? When was it? And where did you go?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's have, so Val, as I mentioned, is a LitNet tutor and really has dove into all things citizenship and has had some great ideas and some interesting experiences. So Val's going to share about her experience as a citizenship tutor.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I have two lovely women that I'm working with, Guadalupe and Maria. And Diane and Leslie are also working with them on their English. So the first thing that I do with them is first meet, hopefully in person, but last year was on Zoom, just to get to know them, you know, because you're going to be, as you can see, kind of with them for at least a year or more. So you hope to form some kind of relationship with them. So in the beginning, it's just getting to know them, seeing kind of where they're coming from with all this, what other demands they have in their lives. One of my students, Guadalupe, is working full time. She's helping her husband drive around to his job. She's studying English. She's going to college. So, you know, to get a feel for how available they are. The last thing I want to do is add too much stress and overload to them. And as you can see, we have plenty of time to get through it. So the first thing I do in terms of exercises, and I'll share the screen with you, is to do the civics exam. And that is, nope, that is not. There you go. Now, keep in mind, when I first started with my student last year.
Well, I think you have to try again.
Yeah.
Try again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to go in and out.
Oh, okay.
It's like a default of screen share sometimes.
How's that?
Yeah,
Looks good.
Mm-hmm.
that's
Okay. This is or we'll call it the new test. It goes back to the 2008 test, which is 100 questions on civics. When Trump was president, he increased it to 128 questions, and some of those were even not legal questions or didn't have correct answers. So I spent a lot of time on the old test before I switched back to the new one. But basically it covers, as you can see, American government. And here's some of the questions we talk about. Sometimes I'll provide them with I have a file that has like the pictures of Congress and the branches of government, just so they can visualize that. So it goes from American government to rights and responsibilities, American history. I mean, I learned a lot from taking this test. I bet if most of us took it now, we might not know all these answers. Like I certainly didn't know about the Federalist Papers, writers. I never heard of Publius before. So there are some things in here that are new to even some of us. And then you go down to integrated civics, which is things like geography, what wars we were in, some of our leaders like Martin Luther King, what happened on 9/11, some of the Indian tribes, what their names are, and holidays. So I usually spend one session a week going over that with people. And I think, you know, if I did 10 questions a week, it would take roughly 10 weeks to get through it. The way I did it was I would do 10 questions the first week. The next week I would do 10 new ones and I would go back and review the prior 10. The third week I do 10 new ones and go back and review the prior 20. So the sessions do get longer. And then sometimes I don't review all the prior 10 or 20. It depends on their pace and how much knowledge I think they have. And you just have to just see what their skill level is. And finally, when we get through all 100, I schedule a session with Pamela, who's on this call, and she will act as the inspector and ask them 10 questions. They have to pass 6 out of 10 questions. I went an extra step. I have a friend who looks like a terrorist. He's the head of security for a company I work for, and he's got this long beard and bald head, and he can be very serious. And I had him actually ask my student Guadalupe all 100 questions because I wanted her to get a feel for what it might be like to be with someone who's not a friendly as face as me or Pamela. And she passed with flying colors. So if you have a friend who you think can be stern and they're willing to do this, it's not a bad thing to do. Once Pamela says that they are capable of passing the civics exams, then she goes back to Lee and says, okay, we could fund the money to Lorena at BIC for their application. So then there's kind of a lull where they're completing their N400. And when it's finally complete, in some cases it's fast, with my other student, I'm still waiting for it. Then I start going over the N400 with them. And like Diane said, there's a lot of dates in there. At first I got hung up on, for example, one of the questions was your spouse married before? And what was that spouse's wife or husband's birthday? I mean, why would you need to know that, right? So I've kind of lightened up on having to know that kind of date, because why would you care about your husband's ex-wife's birthday? I think it's fair to say I don't really know my without looking at the form. But things like employment dates, where they lived, I do try to get them to understand they should at least know the year, if not the month and day. Once we get through that, the next thing I go through with them, and I'll do screen share again, is you can see this now.
Yeah, maybe scroll down a little bit to see the top.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. It's not, there we go.
There you go.
Okay.
First is small talk, you know, and I tell them when you show up for the interview, you're going to be walking down the hall with this person and they're going to ask you, how are you today? How did you get here? Who came with you? They'll ask you if you have your cell phone with you. Different questions like that. If it was snowing, how was the weather? And this is where I kind of find out how they really are at small talk. And both of my students, I found that they weren't very good at small talk. They could memorize the questions and answers on the civics exam. But if I ask, how did you get here today? They would answer a completely different question. So I found out with both of my students that they really need more practice with English. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I went back to Lee and said, do you have someone that that can work with them while they're going through this process. And Leslie is with one of my students, and she just loves Leslie. And Diane just joined with another of my students. We have this good period of months where they can work on things like small talk. And I try to communicate with both with Leslie to tell her things that I think Guadalupe is not doing so well with. For example, using the S's at the end of a word. A lot of Spanish speakers drop the S's. Different things like that. Then we have a sample reading and writing question. And what they're going to do is they'll ask them to read something and then to write something. So then they may say, read this question. What country is to the south of the US? And have the person read it. Then I would say, write, Mexico is to the south of the US. So there's back and forth reading and writing, reading and writing. And they're all related to questions that are on the civics exam. That really tests their ability to hear and write something down, and also to write things out. And if I find something that they're really making a common error with, I'll keep working on that. Well, I'll also tell if they're working with an English tutor, things that they can work on. Some people are better at hearing and speaking than they are at writing. And then the final thing, which I haven't done with either of my students yet, because we just haven't had the time, is, I'm going to try to do share again. I think you have to go in and out each time you share. Where'd it go? Okay, I can't find it now, but it's called tricky vocabulary words. And these basically come from the N400. So they might, as they go through the N400, they'll say, were you a member of the Communist Party? And your answer is no. They're not supposed to do this, but they may say, well, what is the Communist Party? Can you define it? What is a totalitarianism? What does it mean to be tortured? So they might ask them to describe these very tricky for them. Even if I were to ask what is totalitarianism, I'd have to think for a little bit. So you can imagine what it must be for them. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they never get to this point. They're really not supposed to, from what I understand. But if they have any doubt that the person can speak and understand what they're being asked, they may ask them this. Is that right, Pam? It has happened a couple of times. So that's the last thing I'll do with them, was this tricky vocabulary words. And that's basically the process. I do find that right now there's such a long wait for them to be called for their interview that they're focusing on other things. I understand that they'll get a 4-week notice before they have to come for their interview. So at that point, it'd be cram time all over again. But in this period of waiting, I do try to meet with them every few weeks just to go over some of the civics questions, make sure they haven't forgotten them. There are other resources, and I can't screen share them, but I found some very good practice interview videos that are online, and I've sent that to them so they can study that on their own, and they found that very helpful. I believe that is it. Thanks, I think we're saving questions to the end. If not,
yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Thank you. So Pamela is going to talk about the LitNet Matthew and Hannah Cater Family Scholarship, which is a great opportunity that we've had at LitNet since 2019, I believe, the end of 2019. But Pamela can tell you more about that.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Toward the end of 2019, Hannah and Matthew Cater, who live in Lenox, a young couple really, donated $50,000 to LitNet to support citizenship. And so we are lucky enough to be able to administer those funds. And the process is really simple. I'll describe it quickly. First of all, most clients come to us through Lorena or Emma at the Berkshire Immigrant Center, and they do our preliminary screening to be sure that those who want to apply for this scholarship don't have big red flags, just as Lorena mentioned in her talk a few minutes ago. So we watch for a recommendation from the Berkshire Immigrant Center, and they already know to screen for us both fluency and financial need, because we want to be careful with these funds. And so they help us be sure that those who are applying really do need the money and would have a hard time doing it on their own. The total is $820 roughly for both the application, which is the N400 we've been talking about, and then about $95 to the Berkshire Immigrant Center. Actually, I think it went up $5 now. So I should say 100, we need to add another $5 to our pocket to them. But so we pay everything for those who qualify. So not only are we looking for no red flags, but we're looking for a good degree of fluency and also financial need. And once we all sort of agree that that's what the application reflects, I give that applicant a call and run over some of the requirements that we expect of them, because we don't, as Lee memorably said, we are not a bank. We want people who will partner with us at LitNet and become eventually good spokespersons for the program we have, not only the tutoring, but also the scholarship. So I give them a call and explain what we expect of them. And that includes being tutored and also communicating with us. And really that's about it. Just understanding the financial relationship is another piece. And once they once our conversation seems successful, we start them on the path to getting their funding. And that is as soon as they complete about 7 lessons with a tutor like you. And those sessions are only focused on citizenship, the personal information from the N400, the small talk, and then of course the civics questions. After about 7 sessions, I, Lee, and another woman on our committee, sort of the application committee, agree that once we all agree that we have a good candidate, we let them know that we will send the money, and we do that. We send money directly to the Berkshire Immigrant Center, not to the applicant, and those checks accompany their application. And then we wait, just like everybody's waiting. And when our students or learners get their letter to the invitation for the interview, we resume classes. And that's often a pretty intense time where they only have a month to remember everything that they had learned 7 or 8 months before. So we often double up on classes. But at that point, their scholarship money has been sent. So that's what you need to know about the scholarship. We have in the past offered a few partial scholarships, and they were mostly when we realized that financial need was not as great as we had originally thought. And luckily, we don't make any promises until people have finished their sessions with us. And we've also denied funding for people who don't want to work with us, who don't want our tutoring, who just want the funding, because the partnership is an important piece for us. So the scholarship is a fabulous opportunity to help those who really want to become citizens and are totally qualified, just past that financial difficulty. And that's what we do. And in general, we are pretty generous, I'd say. We tend to say yes way more than no. Right now, we have 10 applicants waiting for interviews. And actually later today, we're meeting to discuss 4 new applicants. Once in a while, we'll get an application from someone whose English, or maybe seeming dedication, isn't strong or seems weak to us. And so we'll have them work with a tutor for longer than 7 weeks. And we won't call that citizenship training. We'll call that just a good LitNet connection. And after they've met with us and shown that they really are dedicated to the process and also have become more fluent, then we put them back in the pool for consideration. So that's it for me, unless you have questions. Abby.
I have a question. if someone doesn't, is straightforward from the beginning, I mean, that they don't need any financial assistance, but they do want LitNet tutoring for it, we do that, correct?
Do that. And we've had a few people come to apply and then say, actually, I don't need the money as much as other people might. And they've withdrawn their Cater application and continued with citizenship training.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
Julie, did you have a question? Yes.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, $50,000 is so incredibly generous, but with the high cost of these application fees, that's really what, maybe 60 applicants?
Yeah, and that's partly why we want a good partnership, because at the event at the Berkshire Botanical Garden just two or three weekends ago, someone paid for a full scholarship and added $1,000 to that pool. And actually, as board members, we know that our recent citizens, those who have come through the scholarship program, will be a really good marketing force for us to encourage more funding, just like that wonderful person at the event.
Yeah, luckily the funds are still strong, but I think, LitNet would either have to maybe perhaps go back to this particular donor and say it's been such a success and see, are there additional funds, or open it up as a donation angle, like right now we're collecting donations for this, but we got it in the end of 2019 or 2018, Pam?
I thought it was 19.
Yeah, so then 2020 was kind of a bust, in terms of people being able to move forward. This year's been wonderful. So we had a little rule that wasn't strict, that we were going to give 10 a year. And, last year we were only able to give 4. So we decided to take the 6 that were left over from last year and be generous this year. And so that's 10 plus 6. And once we get there, well, the year's coming to a close, so it might actually be a perfect number, but we said we're going to revisit if we want people to have access to this. And if there are more people, then we don't want to control it with a number. We'd rather find ways to enhance the funding. But right now we're in a good position with it. So it's a great opportunity.
We're somewhere in between questioning our decision to limit it per year, because really, when you look at it, it doesn't make that much sense to say, okay, that many, but not more. But we also want people to understand that it's not just a giveaway and it's not an endless pool of money. And we like the idea that they feel that there's an urgency to do it in a way too, once they get started, to complete it.
Yeah. Abby, you had your hand up, and then
Yeah, I have one other question. The materials that Val showed us, I think would be really helpful. I was just wondering, what other, is there a book that?
Yeah,
that
so I'm
is
going to
given
talk
to
about
us, or
that.
what other materials are available?
I'm gonna do that chapter next. There was a question about a green card that I thought maybe Lorena could speak about, but let's have Diane ask her question, and then maybe we can talk about the green card piece, and then I'll go into resources.
Just
Diane.
one question about the Cater money, that the 1 year that you had so few applicants. The market has been doing so great. I would assume that money is invested somewhere.
Yes, it is. It is.
So that whatever was left should have grown, 18% or something
Yes,
or other last year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Lorena, do you feel comfortable talking about a green card, how one gets a green card? That was a question that came up from some participants.
Yeah, so I think this will be a bigger conversation, because there's a lot of different ways to get one, and it really depends specifically on the person that is applying. But there are different ways. The most common one is through a family petition. So basically, a United States citizen requesting a green card for their parents, their siblings, their child, or their adult sons and daughters. That's a possibility. Someone who already has a green card can also petition, but that's like the family relationship. You can only petition for your parents, your siblings, if you're a US citizen, your spouse, or your kids. the time that it takes to get it depends on where the person is, how old the person is, and what kind of relationship it is. If it's a permanent resident petitioning for an unmarried son that it lives in India, or if it's a US citizen petitioning for their minor child that lives in Peru, the times can be different. So that's one of the ways you get the green card, but then there's also some humanitarian ways, people that apply for asylum, for refugee status, for U visas, VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women's Act. Those are humanitarian ways that you can get a green card. It takes a very long time to get it. You can also get it through employment. That's a little hard, but it is possible. And then there's also the diversity lottery, which is given every year. Depending on the country, there's an amount that they give, and the person could get a green card that way too. So there's many options, and I'll be happy, I don't know, Lee, like later to plan something just to talk about this, because there's a lot of information there. But basically, the only thing that you cannot do is say, hey, Immigration Services, I want a green card, give me one. It needs to be through a petition in one of those ways.
So when people come to be a tutor at LitNet, they choose, we talk about what do you enjoy doing? What would you like to do? There's the beginning ESOL, there's intermediate. Some people, this is what they like to do, and this is only what they like to do. They really enjoy this path, this content. Something about this tutoring is a little finite in some ways too. Like an ESL student, you could work with them for years, many years. And this is kind of, there's the 7 sessions to prepare, there's the waiting for the exam, and then there's the exam piece of things. So again, some people quite like this. What I've been able to do, and what I would do for you as a new student, as a new, citizenship tutor, is connect you with a more experienced person. I haven't been a citizenship tutor, so some among us are experts at that. So I've been able to pair people when it's their first kind of go out to be a citizenship tutor with an experienced person, a lead tutor. So that's a resource that you would have to support you. Pamela's been great. Val's been one of those lead tutors as well. We're so lucky now too to have Lorena in the mix as well. Like, it's really a team of experts in this field. Mark, did you have a question before I talk more about resources?
Yeah, I did, just about process related to Val's presentation. So Val, you mentioned that one of the things you do in the process is go through the N400 application and make sure that the applicant is conversant basically in the information that they've put down on that application. So the filling out of that application is something that's already done by the time we start working with the applicant generally? Is that how that works? We don't actually help them fill out the application, or do we?
No, we don't. And in fact, when I know they're starting to fill it out, I just stay in touch with them or with Pamela, because Pamela is our liaison to Lorena, to find out where that application is. And then once it's finally complete, just keep following up to get a copy of it. And then I can start going over the M400 with them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it's been by the time you're starting to work with the applicant on the questions, it's been filed already by them generally?
Yeah, for example, I'm working with a woman named Maria, and her whole family is applying together. So I've been waiting for, it's been at least 3 months, if not longer, to get a copy of her M400, because for some reason, either hers or one of her family members has been held up. And I'm still waiting for that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not much I can do until I finally get a copy of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great.
Do you have more questions, Mark? A second?
Well, the other thing was the mention of 7 sessions. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so
where does the 7 come from?
So it's part of our qualifications for the scholarship. So we wanted to have some kind of some people work more than that. Some people it's an estimation so that it's 10 sessions. We advise do 7, save 3 for later, but some people, like I said, do more. We recently had a woman who just needed 3. I mean, she's been studying it. She had been studying it on her own and she was quite ready and just aced all the material. So she and her tutor did 3 sessions. The tutor checked in with Pamela and I though, and we said, that's okay. You know, that if why, you know, quote unquote, waste her time. She's lived here for many years. She's prepared for it. So we kind of weigh in on it. It's just some kind of a boundary of saying, again, we are not a bank that, you know, you sign up to not only get the funds, but to be well prepared and to use our services. And so this is what we recommend.
Yeah, and Mark, for
Okay.
me, I found that my 2 students need far more than 7 weeks. I mean, I probably met with one of them, you know, 25, 30 times, and the other one about 15 so far. So that's
Yeah.
what I mean by it being an individual case.
Yeah.
Right.
And then actually my first one is spending a lot more time with Leslie now instead of me, because that's where she really needs to work is with
Mhm.
English.
Mhm.
And the application says that that we reach an agreement with the Berkshire Immigrant Center and with our tutor to decide for sure that the person is ready. So 7 is arbitrary,
Got
but
it.
you know, we just want to see that commitment.
Mhm.
Diane.
The only point I wanted to make to Mark regarding the N400, that kind of comes later. I mean, I did all of my history training, etc., with my student before she went to the Immigrant Center to fill out the N400. And Val, you should be getting yours because I've already gotten the one for Stephania. So the whole family got theirs already.
Yeah, I know she said she was going to meet with Emma last week, so I need to follow up with her again today.
Right, they definitely have them.
Okay.
I wanted to say too, something that is important to us at LitNet is we don't want to be cookie cutter about any kind of curriculum that we propose. So there's not one way to do this. We want you to be creative and have fun with it and do it your way. I will show you some resources that we do have though. There's a whole set of books and I took some feedback from Val and from other tutors about which ones they like and which ones are kind of, you know, pointless. I mean, I think that the crux are the questions. The 100 questions are really the content, right? So using those, and we have flashcards that are available at the office that go through them. Yeah, Pamela has it's the same deck, it's just a bit smaller, but so these flashcards are helpful. So we can get you a set, we can get your learner a set just to practice. There's also these vocabulary flashcards. I haven't seen any tutors use them. I don't think that but they're available. And so if anybody is a new citizenship tutor and you want to come to the office and look at things, you can. So I'm highly recommending these as I think as a good thing to use. There's a set of books, and in the books, again, we have all of these. This one was highly recommended. Okay, so it's a whole series. I think it's oh, the government puts it out.
Yeah.
So learn about the United States. It's a quick book here. So that'll help tutors get prepared. This is a good one. And then
I just want to say about that book,
yes,
that book is essential, really. And in the back of that book, in addition to the civics questions, it has sample reading and writing exercises and words they should know how to spell and hear and write.
good. This one was highly recommended as well. Get ready for the interview. Okay, so again, these are, if you contact me, we can get these to you. There are several others that weren't as highly rated. So this is for class. This one, civics and literacy, but most tutors have said it's just okay. But again, maybe as a starter kit, you want them all just to look through and delve in and get yourself familiar. And as you get experience, you'll decide which books work for your tutoring. This one is about literacy skills, but it's for a beginner, really for, I think, someone who's really beginning to learn all the history content. So those are all available. Pam and Val, I don't remember if one of you told me about this. Yeah, so I just bought 8 of them. So this is
good.
interesting. It's like a graphic novel. about history. And so I think it could be interesting to use. So I just bought a bunch of these because it just seemed fun and different and clear, and how to be an American. So
One of our scholarship applicants recommended that to me. That's how I knew
right,
about
that's
it.
right. So I have some now in our collection. Julie did some interesting pulling of, recommending movies, historical movies to see, and perhaps podcasts. Like, we want to pull all the information together, but like, I think that's interesting homework to say, hey, see this movie and see how the content connects. I don't know, Julie, if you remember any of them off the top of your head, some of the materials you had pulled together.
I do recommend that people watch the filmed version of the musical 1776. I think it's pretty accessible. It's fun. There are a lot of lists out there, and I just feel that I think it's helpful to learn about history and be entertained at the same time, especially since so many of these learners are working many jobs, and it's hard to carve out time to do actual studying. But if you can suggest a film, or even something like an American Tale that they can watch if they have young children, to just they're going to come away having enjoyed something with the family and learned a little bit.
The other good thing to do is discuss the news with them. I happen to be training Guadalupe during the presidential election period from November up till January, and she would text me things like, that's why we have checks and balances. I mean, she was really applying what she was learning to what was going on. It was an incredible time to be a learner, because you got to really see how valuable our Constitution is.
Yeah. So what other questions do people have about this process, about tutoring? So Lorraine, I see you have something to say, and then Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the N400. So the applicant does have to know the information that is in there, right? But the N400 doesn't change, and it's you can find it at the USCIS website, and I'm gonna put the link on the in the chat. So it's something that you can click on and read if you wanted to, and if you wanted to start also, getting to know the security questions, those questions that can get some follow-up questions, those are not going to change. So you can do it from the beginning if you wanted to, however you feel like it. And then once the application is finally completed and filed, then you can focus on that specific information that is going to be about the applicant. So I'm just going to put it in the chat so you can have access to it.
Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, just in terms of approach, I mean, at the end of the day, the citizenship questions are specific questions with specific answers, right? So there is, I assume, some balance between making people interested in history and background and so forth, and on the other hand, sort of like studying for the bar exam, you got to know the exact answer. So it's a memorization exercise. Absolutely. In addition to the background, right? So
absolutely. Yes, and I think we had found some of our learners had memorized it in just context, but how great if they also then had the applied understanding, right? But yes, you're absolutely right that part of the goal is to memorize those 100 questions, ideally. Yes.
The citizenship questions never stray beyond those 100. And by the way, is it 100 or 128? Val, you mentioned that there were two.
It's 100, yeah. Biden
Yeah.
went back to the original 100 question test.
Yeah,
and you have to pass six out of 10.
Yeah,
right.
They're not long answer questions. They're short answer questions. Yes.
You're right. And I should say that when I go through the questions with them, I try to skip around and not do them by groups.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, good. And the great thing is that Pamela does these mock interviews, which really is helpful, just for them to hear it from a different voice. They won't all know Pamela. It's a great opportunity for you guys to, she'll invite tutors to be there as well, so the learner has support. And Pamela was giving just some context clues. Listen for this. It's in the question. Listen, so it's really a great process.
Here is a
Those
sample.
who haven't seen the questions, the reverse side of those 100 questions are the answers.
And
So
I'd
it's
like to,
very specific.
I'm showing one now which says under our Constitution, some powers, I can't read that up.
Belong to the
Belong to
state.
the
Belong to the
state.
states, thank you. And the back has 5 answers, which you'll see here. You don't need to read them, but your learner only needs to know 1.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about all the answers.
Mhm.
They're
I
just
have a
rephrased.
question. I have a question.
Sure, Lucy.
I did the citizenship thing with one student, I could say 4 or 5 years ago. And I did have those materials that you showed in the beginning.
Mhm.
But I understood that one went to the student and then one went to the tutor. Is that automatic or what?
Do you mean materials?
Yes.
Yes, like always, like all of our materials, especially during current times. Like I've delivered books to you, I could deliver these to you and stuff for your student as well. Some people are working in person and yes.
I see. All right. So
Yeah.
that do it that way. All right.
Yeah, and again, but I think as the tutor, probably what I would start out was to give it all to you and say, which do you like, because to prevent having to give all of this to a learner that could be
Right.
overwhelming, that I might have you first say, I think that these materials make sense for me to work with these materials.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
I also should add that in the book for the 100 civics questions and answers, for every question, there's paragraphs of explanation that is just not essential to know.
Yeah, good
It's
comment.
way too much information. We just concentrate on the question and the answer. If they're super smart and super interested, they could read that on their own sometime, but it's just way too much information.
Yeah, good point.
So it's wonderful to have you all interested in this kind of tutoring at LitNet. It's interesting though as well that I kind of have people on a waiting list to be a citizenship tutor, whereas I need ESL tutors. We have all kinds of levels of beginners. We have all kinds of students coming in now. It's really so interesting. We just got a US born student who wants to work on his writing. I mean, he's a 50-year-old man who wants support with his writing. And I just had a Latina woman who's a student at BCC in an academic program. And we have advanced students now, we have intermediate, we have beginners, we have brand new immigrants. The citizenship list is fewer and farther between. But again, Pamela and I are reviewing 4 applications today, so that's great. So anyway, I guess all that to say, if we get off the call today and you're all like, yes, I want a citizenship learner, it might not come quickly, but I keep a list of people who are interested. Something too I want to try is an app. So Val told me about this app. Tutors have asked about this before, a way for tutors to speak with each other. So I'd like to pilot this app called GroupMe. So it could be all the citizenship tutors are in this app, and there can be communication like, oh, I saw this movie, I recommend it, so that there's kind of a group of just people focusing on this content. So perhaps we'll pilot that, but I'll send out an email to you all and say, would you be willing to give it a try? I think the community in this type of tutoring is important, and you guys are the best resources to each other.
Yeah, I use GroupMe, the Hoffman Bird Club up in the Berkshires. Anytime they see an exciting bird, just during this call, I got 2 posts about something happening. And then everybody gets it, and you can look, you can not look,
Mm-hmm. So questions, thoughts, anything that would be helpful to?
I have a question.
Yes.
A question about doing in-person tutoring.
Yep.
Where is that done usually? Is it done at somebody's home? Is it done in a library?
Yeah.
Is it done in a community setting, which is what I would imagine?
Yes. So never at homes, your home or the learner's home, always somewhere public. Libraries have really been the place.
Okay.
And some people, you know, when the weather's nice, meet
Do it
outside
in a
or at
park or-
cafes or,
Right.
you know, the complication about a cafe is that tutors can feel maybe obligated to buy their learner a cup of coffee, and nobody wants anybody to feel obligated. Or,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
noise levels.
Mhm.
So libraries have been really great, and they're all up and running and welcoming us at this point.
Okay.
Tutors and learners decide together whether they want to work in person or by Zoom. Everybody has a right to their safety.
To either. Mhm.
You know, the Lee Library right now requires masks, so that can be also complicated. I'm not sure what other libraries are doing right now, but we do ask learners if they're vaccinated or not, so we have that information, so we can, you know, have those conversations. And
Okay.
yeah. And
One good place to meet is the Lee Outlet Mall. They have a food court and they have tables outside.
Sure.
The only downside is they do play music that to me is a little bit loud, but
Yeah.
you know,
yeah,
it's you know, you start driving around and saying, oh, that's a good place to meet. There's a
I would
picnic table.
imagine a library would probably be the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the
you know,
outdoors at McDonald's. There's
right.
a picnic table outside the bank in Lee. You know,
Right,
that
or
I
at
never
the
noticed
Lenox
before.
Park, I know, right
Yep.
next to the library.
Yeah.
So for the most part, are
Mhm.
you finding most people are opting, most of the learners are opting for, you know, Zoom, virtual?
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
we do have some data. It sounds like probably 2/3 of people are still working virtually,
Right,
and a third of people are in person.
right.
I'm not sure if that's going backwards. If it was going forward at one point, I'm not sure if it's going backwards. I mean, I'm really glad that we've found Zoom can work. You know, our
Mhm.
learners are busy, our tutors are busy. It's a great option. Especially when there's a hybrid model that people at least meet in person, you know, a few times so that they do have that connection. So for
Right.
you and for your community to become a tutor, there's an intake link. So if you wanted to officially be a tutor, you would just need to complete this a questionnaire. So we have your number and all that, and you
Mhm.
could contact us as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Other questions? Great. Julie.
No, I think this has just been so terrific, and I was wondering if, in addition to recording it, it might serve as the basis of the creation of a sort of tutor handbook or introduction to citizenship tutoring, because it's a lot to remember.
Yes.
Yeah. And I just think, you know, it would just be a wonderful support resource.
Great idea. Thank you. So after today, if you want to be on my citizenship tutor list, let me know. Some of you already are. Some of you are on that list. But if you think you would like to be added to that list, please do send me an email after confirming that. And if you have any other questions, and again, just let anybody you know, we are short on other tutors right now. We have a lot of students, which is great. We're about at 134 students that we're serving right now. BCC has a waiting list of 85 students. So there's not enough services right now in the community for people who need to learn English or improve their English. So we are active. We have lots of students coming in, which is great. And we just want to continue to be able to pair them. So spread the word.
Yeah, I was going to suggest if you belong to any local Facebook group, like I'm on Otis and Sandusville Facebook group, you could list that, you know, LitNet's looking for tutors. I did that with our Otis Woodlands Association, and I think Diane and I have 5 people from our community that are now involved with it.
That's great.
So list it in places like that where people might see it.
Yeah, nice.
Great.
Good. All right. And that's it, I guess. That's it for today. And thank you all
Thanks,
for your
Lee.
interest and your commitment. And thanks, Lorena, and thanks, Pamela, and thanks, Val. And thank you all. Really appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
just
you.
want to put in a final plug. Lee was named as one of the Berkshire 25 movers and shakers that makes our community great. So congratulations to Lee.
Thank you. My
Yes.
pleasure. I have a great job.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
I love
Terrific.
the organization.
Great
Thank you
work.
all.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye now.
Goodbye.
Bye.